Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. We have to tell you the funniest story ever. So this weekend, we had my dad's side of the family annual Christmas party that we have every year, and we look forward to it. And we have lots of cousins and aunts and uncles that are listeners. So hi. And hey, guys. Hey, let's think of who specifically came up to us. Andrea and Al and Jimmy. And of course, Gina, Renee, all Natalie. So yeah, we definitely have a bunch of our family members who are listeners. But so my dad comes up to me at the party and he goes, "Hey, I finally listened to your X-rated podcast." And I was like, so this is hilarious because we've been doing this podcast for over a year. My dad's never listened to it. Like we've said before, he probably doesn't even know what a podcast is, but this party is almost an hour away for us to drive. So my mom probably put it on while they were driving there and like forced him to listen to it. But I was like, X-rated. And then so I go up to my mom and I'm like, what's Daddy talking about? He said what's X-rated about the podcast? And here he was listening to the part where we were talking about hole tox and dudes that get Botox in their asshole to make anal sex more comfortable. So I thought that was like a great first introduction for my dad to listen to the show. So of course it's the first episode he's ever listened to, the one where because he's like a really old school Italian guy, so just hearing like anybody talk so openly about sexual things, let alone his daughter and granddaughter, was just probably such a shock to the system. And my mom listens to every episode and I think she just thinks we're being funny, but he was probably
she's
mortified.
a little less prude than he is, so I just think it is hilarious.
He just kept giving me this look across the room, like
he's probably mortified, but whatever. All right, let's get into the story of the day.
All right, so last week in Virginia, there was this group of people hunting. They came across a bear. It seems like from the report that they had scared the bear to the point where the bear climbed up a tree. And then while the bear was up there, one of the hunters shot at it. So the problem in this whole situation lies with the fact that all the guys were not necessarily clear of the surrounding area of the bottom of the tree. And as the bear fell out, it hit one of the guys on the ground and gave him serious injuries that later caused his death.
Jesus Christ. But that's like some karma shit right there, for real.
It is pretty crazy. I don't know. I looked up how heavy bears are because you could tell they're heavier creatures, but I was like pretty shocked. So in Virginia, they have black bears, which I think are considered some of the smaller bears we have in this country, but the male black bears can range from 280 to 1,100 pounds. And then females can range from 200 to 660 pounds. So imagine if this was a full-fledged adult bear, how heavy that would be.
Yeah, and it probably was because you're not allowed to shoot ones under a certain size, right? So it probably was a bigger bear. And yeah, just imagine a 200 to 600, even more pound weight falling from a tree and landing on a person. So I'm actually surprised the guy didn't die on impact, but you don't know exactly what angle it hit him at. Apparently he was still alive. And this is the interesting thing, that at the scene, they said that he was I don't even think they said that he was in serious condition, right? Didn't they say that he was stable at the scene and they brought him to the hospital and then he later died from his injuries? So I'm wondering if he had some kind of a brain bleed or something that they weren't able to either identify right away when they thought that he was fine. Because you hear that happen too. Like, remember we did the celebrity death dissection on Natasha Richardson? She was the mom from The Parent Trap.
Yeah.
And she had hit her head while skiing, and she told the instructor that she was fine and she was able to get up and go back to her room, and she seemed fine. And then all of a sudden, she died. So that could happen. You don't always have to necessarily die right away from a blunt injury like that. So that's more than likely what happened with this guy. But imagine you being the other hunter that shot the bear, and it was kind of your fault that this bear fell on top of your friend. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we hear about hunting accidents a lot, but I've never quite heard of this. I don't think a lot of people know that bears can so easily climb up trees. And then I was, of course, going to YouTube to watch videos of bears falling out of trees, and there's a lot of footage of it, and it's just this gigantic thump when they hit the ground. So I can't even imagine that falling on a person.
Yeah, I can't either.
So this guy leaves behind 5 kids, 8 grandkids, a wife. It's really sad. I just think this is some like crazy freak thing that I don't think most hunters are thinking about things. I mean, they intentionally shot it out of the tree, but I don't think they realized
So what
quite the
they think
impact
was-
it was going to have.
What did they think was going to happen? Like it was just going to stay up there? Because, I mean, you're shooting it because you want to keep the trophy, right? So they had to assume it was going to fall. Just maybe, I don't know, like maybe the one guy wasn't paying attention or whatever, because I think they said he was only
10
standing
feet.
10 feet from the tree, which is like
Not that
not,
far.
not far at all, right? So,
I don't know.
okay. Celebrity news.
All right, so in Barcelona, this fashion designer, his name's Isaac Andic. Do you know the brand Mango?
Yeah, I do.
So they have really cute stuff. He founded this brand in the 80s. He was hiking on this popular tourist area with his family. I guess at some point during the hike, they approached these caves that are really beautiful. You know, they said a lot of tourists go to this area. It's not uncommon somebody would be hiking there. So at some point while exploring the caves, he fell down a ravine, which was about 500 feet or 150 meters. And he had to be, they couldn't find him at first. The family had to call 911. A helicopter and a special rescue crew had to come. And unfortunately, by the time they got down there, he was dead.
Yeah. Do you want to hear something really nuts? So right before I saw this story in the news, so we're traveling to out west later this year, and my friend Paul lives out there, and he sent me a picture of some cave that has a ladder in it that's like 100 years old, and he's like, "Hey, are you guys interested in going in this hike? I want to find this cave that has this 100-year-old ladder that you can climb down and go into this cave." And he sends me the picture of it, and I'm looking at it like, yeah, okay, that sounds like a really good idea, that we're going to be like in the middle of the desert with no cell service, and we're going to stand on this ladder and it's going to break and we're going to be stuck in a cave, right? But then I said, well, Gabe might want to do that with you, actually, because it sounds right up Gabe's alley, right? But then as soon as I read that, this story came up, and I just thought that that was just like a sign that we definitely should go nowhere near that with Paul. But yeah, he fell. So how far did he fall? You said over.
It's the article I was referencing said 150 meters, which when I converted it said it was around 500 feet deep.
Yeah, that's consistent with a fall from a 50-story building, anywhere, depending, because I think I read that it was 100 meters, but regardless, it's anywhere from like a 30 to 50-story building. So think about that, like a huge high rise in New York City and falling to the ground. Like it's those injuries are going to be significant. I'm surprised that they were able to even get his body down that far. Like that must have just been a lot in itself to be able to get down there to get him.
Oh yeah, and he was 71 years old. Like the people we know in our life that are in their 70s would never dare even leave the house to go on a walk around the block, let alone go hiking in caves with their family. So I thought that was kind of cool that he was going out and having this day with his family, but obviously it had the worst possible ending.
Yeah, so when you fall from a height of that high, you sometimes with the bodies at autopsy, you see specific injuries that happen depending on how the person lands. So we were talking about with Liam Payne, he fell from only a 3rd floor balcony, right?
Yeah.
So he wasn't that far. But remember, we were saying that he didn't have any injuries that were consistent with him being awake and alert and trying to brace his fall in any way. Because a lot of times you'll see injuries like broken bones on the feet. Sometimes the ankle bone will pop right through the skin because people are trying to land on their feet or trying to brace their fall with their hands. But sometimes in these cases, when you're falling that fast and the force is just so fast, you really don't have any control over how you're going to land and stuff. And if you do land on your feet or your butt, it could cause something in your skull called a ring fracture. And that's just from the impact of the bottom of your spine, basically just like pushing up into your skull. So at the base of the skull, it causes a fracture that's like a ring or a circle. And those particular injuries are almost always consistent with an instant death.
Is there a height in which you could maybe like pass out midair if you're falling from a certain height?
I don't know. That would all be specific on the individual if they have some kind of a reaction like that, but it's so fast, honestly. I don't really know if that's a thing that happens.
It just like I can't. There's a couple ways of dying that just seem really horrible, and just falling for that long because it goes by quickly, right? But it's like kind of too long where you know what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, and just think about that being the last couple seconds of your life. It's just like such a scary feeling to, I don't know. I'm really afraid of heights. So just, I'm like so afraid of heights. Like if I'm at the mall and I look over the edge of the banister, like I don't like that feeling. It gives me like a scared feeling. I just don't like heights at all. So for someone like me, just thinking about having that feeling so intense, I remember years ago I took this elevator, which was at the Sears Tower in Chicago. I don't even know if it's called that anymore, but it took you all the way to the top and you could kind of just like look out the window outside, and just being up that high and looking outside of a window, knowing you're protected in a building just like scares me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I would never even be doing anything like this, like going with Paul in a cave.
heights don't really bother me like that. Something interesting is when I was in Lake Placid a couple weeks ago, it was snowing pretty bad the whole time, and there was a lot of people pulled over going on hiking trails, and I could not possibly wrap my head around going hiking at all, mostly because I'm lazy, but also just, hiking with all that ice and snow. And then my husband was saying something that apparently going hiking on certain trails could be easier with ice because it's easier to grip certain rocks and it smooths them over or something, which makes these avid hikers want to go out and do it more. I just could never do something like that. I
I'm into hiking just as long as there's protections.
Yeah, I'm just wondering in this case, because this accident happened recently, I feel like Barcelona has kind of similar weather to us. So I'm wondering if it was icy conditions or if it was a nice regular day out.
So this brand Mango, I had never, I mean, I guess it's a huge deal. Has it been here forever too? Because I just came across it recently, like a year or two ago, and I was like, oh, all these clothes are cute. I never heard of this brand. I don't like, have you heard of it? And I've just been totally checked out this whole time.
I think you've been checked out. I don't want to say it's been in the US forever. It was founded in the 80s in Spain by this guy. I've been aware of it for quite some time because I've always thought their clothes were really cute. But I feel like they used to sell it maybe, I don't know. I feel like it used to be at like a couple department stores near us,
Yeah, I don't know.
but
It's
they have
just like
standalone
interesting.
stores. But
Okay. All right. So the next story is a good one.
So Elton John was named Time Magazine's Icon of the Year. So during his interview, he was talking about his career and his overall struggles with addiction at the peak of his career. And he basically ended the interview saying that legalizing marijuana in America and Canada is one of the greatest mistakes of all time.
What do you think about that?
Um, when, this whole interview, he was talking about how he was introduced to cocaine and got addicted, and then that, made him try other drugs and everything. And he went on in the interview to talk about how marijuana is definitely a gateway drug, in his opinion, being a former drug addict. I thought that was an interesting take from somebody that was a drug addict. They also asked him about if he felt the same way about alcohol. I thought it was interesting that they said he turned to his husband to answer on his behalf, and they kind of just were like, while it is socially acceptable, it's still kind of this problem people are refusing to acknowledge. I see it the same way as alcohol in a way, what makes weed worse than drinking? It both changes how your brain is feeling and can alter your state of mind.
So back in the day, I used to smoke a lot of weed, and I used to be like, yeah, legalize weed, blah, 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 blah. And then when I really started thinking about it, especially when I stopped using it, I definitely I agree with him 100%. And I think if you talk to a lot of people who used to use marijuana heavily that have stopped, most of these people would say that they've seen an increase of productivity in their life as well as an increase in their quality of life. And just they could agree with what he is saying, that they always try to push this thing that weed's like this natural thing that grows in the ground and it's not addictive and it's not harmful and this and that. And in my opinion and personal experience and also professional experience, I find that is completely false. I think that it shouldn't be legal because I look at like the reasons that I think that, like, I don't give a shit if people use weed and want to use weed. But the thing is that when the U.S. government says that weed is legal, you're telling people that it's okay. It's not that bad because if the U.S. government says it's okay, then it can't be that bad. That's what people think, but that's not the truth. It's the same with alcohol. It's the same with cigarettes. And the government only legalized it not because they care that you can get it. It's, safer or whatever. They realize that they can make a shit ton of money off of it. So they don't care that they're just introducing this to a whole bunch of other people like you, for example, like super rule follower people, which there's a ton of you in the world, right? You might be more scared to ever try doing marijuana or having it daily because you would be like, well, it's illegal. And if somebody smells it coming out of my house, I'll get arrested or, all this stuff. And that would kind of deter you from using it. But now that it is legal, people just, and clearly we can tell what's happened because, and maybe that's just because it's legal in my state, but I think it's pretty much legal in most areas of the country at this point, right?
No. I mean, it's legal. It's recreationally legal, medically legal in a bunch of states, but it's not recreationally legal in most states.
Well, whatever. Wherever we are in New Jersey and Philadelphia, it's like you just smell weed wherever you're at all times, and people are just smoking it outside as if it was a cigarette. And it's the use of it and the openness of it is definitely way up from then when I was younger, I'll say. So there are health risks associated with marijuana, including like there's an increased risk of having psychosis, and you could have all of these different kinds of mental health aspects of it, especially if you have underlying depression or schizophrenia or something. It could really make those conditions worse. But there's also problems, and we're going to talk about that in another article we have talking about vaping a little bit later. But there's health problems that are associated with, and they even have done studies that say that the burning of the marijuana could lead to cancer in patients. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of this over time. And I know that marijuana has been around for a long time, but back in the day, if you went to the doctor in the 80s and the 90s and they say, do you use recreational drugs? Every single person puts no, because why would you put that in writing if they were illegal, right? So all of these statistics of people like getting cancer later in life and stuff and all that how do you know that marijuana didn't give people cancer? Because nobody used to admit to it because it was illegal. So
yeah, but
now
you could say that about 100 other things.
Yeah, but I'm telling you right now, like this is going to be like, and I want you to go back 10 years ago. I was saying the same shit. So just
Also,
like it will 100% come up in the future because more people are. That's the only way that they're able to determine what's causing cancer because of people's health records.
well, also weed used to actually be natural, and in today's day and age, like everything else, it's genetically modified, it's manufactured, so those are going to cause problems as well, just because it's evolved over time so much.
It doesn't matter if it's natural anyway, because there's plenty of natural things that could cause harm, and it's not just like you could do all the tests you want on the marijuana plant itself. But when you turn anything and when you burn anything, it totally changes the chemical composition of that thing, which could then change DNA, which then can lead to atypical cells that can lead to cancer. So it's just something I think people should just have their eyes open about and say, just because the government says it's legal now, it's not legal doesn't equal good. And you could see that with alcohol and cigarettes for sure. So
Yeah, but people do think alcohol is fine. So,
Yeah, well, it's not. Like, I'm sorry. That's not my opinion. Like, that's the hundreds of liver transplants I've seen and autopsies and everything associated with chronic alcohol use. Not to mention all of the other stuff that you could really measure out, drinking and driving accidents. There was just one where a 7-year-old kid just got killed in a DUI accident. Like, it's not good for you. And there's really no articles, medical literature anyway, saying that it is, you know what I mean? So it's the same thing with cigarettes. Like, God, don't even go down that road, right? Just because the government says it's okay doesn't mean it's safe. That's all I want to say. So I see what Elton John's saying, because you're almost giving people that permission. Like, listen to me. If they said right now we're going to legalize, let's say, cocaine, you would see an increase in cocaine use.
yeah, of course. But like you said earlier, though, they don't give a shit about what happens to you. They care that the tax money has gone up astronomically.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what they care about.
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as people are making their decisions based on that, then, because I hear a lot of stuff about people arguing with you that, it's not addictive, it's not this. And it's like, you could talk to plenty of people, especially people like me, that I could talk from experience because I did a shit ton of it. It is a gateway drug. It is addictive. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you say. It is. They can say whatever they want. Like,
I think saying that as I don't think I think it can be addictive, but I don't think it's like, I smoked weed for a really long time. I wasn't addicted to it. Like, and I stopped doing it, no problem. So, like, I think it depends on your personality type. I think it depends on.
Yeah, that's you though. But you don't have any kind of predetermined thing to have addiction. Like, it's the same thing you could say about drinking alcohol and going gambling.
But ingredients in cigarettes are proven to be addicted to anybody that regularly smokes them. Like, saying marijuana is addicted in the same way cigarettes are is just not a correct statement, in my opinion, because it depends on your personality, what kind of weed you're getting. I think a lot of these dispensaries are, some of them are really about the natural approach, but some of them are about the heavily genetically modified approach. And I think that's what could lead to an addiction.
Well, I think addiction's just it's just too broad of a term for anything, because you could say, like, my husband drinks a case of seltzer water a day. Is he addicted to it? Probably. Like, if he doesn't have it, he kind of gets anxiety over it. Like, well, what am I going to drink today? I don't have any fizzy water. Like, can you please get some groceries? Blah, blah, blah. Like, right? So people could have it towards lots of different things that aren't considered to be, like, chemically addictive for people, So it's kind of not true to say that it's not. I don't know.
It depends on the person. Let's move off.
All right. Freak accidents.
All right. So, speaking of this topic, I guess we're going to continue the conversation. This teenage boy who was 15 was sneaking around vaping. What was confusing about this to me is that his parents said they were constantly finding a vape in his room, although they forbid him from doing it. And then he would just go on walks all the time. Like, what else do you think he was doing?
Well, this is the thing. I love that this article heavily emphasizes that the parents kind of, like, knew about this and told him not to do this and were really trying to get him not to do this. But ultimately, when you have a 15-year-old kid, somehow they're able to get access to that thing. They leave the house. You can't, like, sit on top of them and never let them leave the house and stuff. Like, kids, this is just like a kid being a kid. This is a story as old as time. Kids hiding cigarettes, kids hiding drugs, alcohol, whatever. They just wanted to be clear in this article that, like, they didn't condone his behavior.
All right. Anyway, one night he goes on one of his, quote, walks to go sneak a smoke. And he said as he walked up to this overpass near his house, the vape wasn't working. So he tapped it on the ground. And then as he lifted it back up to his mouth, the thing exploded in his hands.
Yeah. So this little, like, a vape pen can act like a small explosive device, and parts of it are made of glass and metal. And it essentially acted like shrapnel and partially amputated parts of his hand. Like, went home to be like to his parents, call 911, I'm having a problem. And his dad said that his thumb was like hanging off of his hand by his wrist. And when he went to the hospital, he had to end up getting extensive hand surgery, and they did have to amputate a couple of his fingers, but they were able to save his thumb. But his hand is completely mangled. He said it was turned inside out.
Yeah, and the FDA is saying that these events with the explosions are unusual, but they think it could be related to the battery inside them. Do you think it's one of
Really?
those lithium-ion batteries?
So this is actually really interesting. So there's a coil in these vape pens that has to get heated in order to heat this flammable liquid so it could turn it into a vapor, right? And they do often use lithium-ion batteries. Lithium-ion batteries are regulated with things like cell phones and laptops, and we talked about this with Fasinelli last year when we did that article with
The external exam.
we did that external exam with Chief Fasinelli from FDNY, and we were talking about how they're regulated. Like if you get a phone from Apple, it's a regulated thing. There's a low risk of anything happening with that battery because they're FDA regulated, right? But what about when you get like a knockoff from China, from Amazon to charge your DeWalt battery or whatever you do, right? Then those ones that aren't approved, and they're the ones that they're seeing with the scooters and everything in New York are causing most of the fires, or these like Bobo counterfeit ones, right? Well, when you're talking about these lithium-ion batteries with vape pens, they're actually not regulated at all. So that's part of the problem. There's no regulations with those at this time. There's just been countless emergency room injuries because of these explosions, and of course it's because of the battery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall message behind this story is children should certainly not be vaping. And I think because children are vaping, they're not learning about the other dangers that could be lurking behind the devices they're using, such as this or them catching on fire.
Yeah, which is also just, and this is what I wanted to say earlier, this is like just another issue that comes along with these, because again, when these first came out, I've been saying since before I even started Instagram that these vapes are horrible, and they're going to be horrible. And let me tell you why. Because the majority of the companies that are owned by these vape people are Philip Morris, okay, who's we all know is like the number one cigarette manufacturer who is responsible for the death of millions of people, and Altria, which is owned by Philip Morris as well, right? So these two companies that have made cigarettes, who hid all of the information for years that they cause cancer, even though they knew it, right? They're the ones that are putting out this new product and saying that it's healthy and it's fine and it's not dangerous. But let's talk about this. Last year in 2023, the e-cigarette manufacturers, they made $23.3 billion. So that's why they say whatever they are going to say to get you to buy it, because it's just like a huge moneymaker, right? And not only, I mean, the vape pens exploding are kind of like not even the biggest problem that could happen. There's this lung condition called EVALI, which is e-cigarettes and vaporized lung injury, which is being seen now more and more, which they're kind of like, okay, this is new, so we don't really know what to call it and how to handle it. But what they found is that this vitamin E that's in the liquid that's in these vape pens can be causing lung injury to people. But they're also saying it's not just specific to that. So if they took vitamin E oil out of it, there could be something else that could be causing pulmonary injury to people. But it's just like you're kind of swapping one problem for another problem.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, kids shouldn't be doing it, but like they're targeting and advertising these things to children. I've seen the videos on YouTube and stuff. It's like they're getting influencers to do it because they're not allowed to do advertisements anymore because of what happened with the cigarettes. So now they're like backdooring it and giving it to people that are making YouTube and TikTok videos.
Yeah. All right. Last Friday, this 26-year-old guy and his son were walking their 3 dogs by this local playground. Suddenly, the dogs started attacking the man. So bystanders called 911, tried to help to get the dogs off of him. They were hitting the dogs with golf clubs and shovels. They were XL bullies. Is that the same as a pit bull? Do you know?
Well, pit bulls don't exist, so don't get the pit bull people all angry.
What do you
It's a
mean pit
mixed
bulls
breed.
don't exist?
They don't. They will tell you they're not a thing. They're mixed breed dogs, and there's no such thing as a pit bull. I don't know, and I don't care. It's just kind of like, I'm kind of bored, honestly, by every single week there being like 10 articles about specific kinds of dogs. And it's not just these, quote, pit bulls. It's also other dogs. This week alone, a family had Rottweilers that were like this little girl's pet her whole entire life. She's 5, and they mauled her to death. I mean, like, we don't even talk about it because it happens so many times a week. But I guess one of my friends had one of these bullies, which was a bulldog bred with a pit bull type dog, right?
I have no idea.
I don't know what an extra large one is. I don't know. It's just like, clearly they were just describing it as being this huge muscular dog that was able to kill its owner. So it's like, right?
Yeah, so suddenly the dog started attacking the guy, the owner, out of nowhere, and then the bystanders were trying to, beat the dogs off of him with the golf clubs and shovels and stuff, and the dogs would not lay up at all. One of the dogs ended up biting another guy that was trying to help in this situation, giving him serious injuries as well. But they had to wait till the cops got there. The cops tasered the dogs to get him off, which is so ridiculous. One of them got away. A local elementary school had to then go on lockdown. Think about other people in the playground and just taking walks too, and how dangerous that could have been. And then, his son basically just, I don't know how old the kid was, but watched his dad get mauled to death in front of him. So,
yeah. And that's why I wanted to talk about this particular story as opposed to the millions of other ones that we see all the time. It's just like, this guy had these dogs, right? Brought it to a playground where there's a bunch of innocent people. When you look at the photos from the video, you're just like, yeah, that just looks like the local playground up the street where children are playing on the jungle gym and stuff like that. And then the dog freaking escaped. Did they ever find it?
Yeah, they got all 3 dogs eventually.
Yeah, so this dog that just killed a person is now running around, and you get a call from your school that it's on lockdown because there's this like killer animal on the loose. Like, it's so ridiculous. I just feel like there needs to be some kind of regulations with, and I don't really know where you draw the line, because
people are coming at you for that, because anytime we have a story talking about
I don't give
dogs,
a shit. Guess what? If my kids are playing outside, like, I don't want them to get bit by some dog that somebody shouldn't even own. Like, you sit there and say that a human living in America can't have a tiger as a pet, right? Why? Because they attack people and kill people. They don't all do it. Like, some people on Instagram have pumas as pets and shit like that, right? If you raise it from when it's a baby and you don't beat it and shit, and it's all, it's all nicey nice and stuff like that. But like, you don't let animals like that just walk around to the park on a leash. Like, sorry.
This actually just happened on Housewives last week. One of the housewives showed up for their group trip or whatever, and she was like, oh, I'm not feeling well. I got bit by another dog at the dog park. And when they showed her injuries, I was like, how are you not losing your leg? There was these insane puncture wounds in this woman's leg and arm, and she was saying that the owner of that dog was in his car taking a phone call and just letting this dog roam around the dog park unattended. I mean, that's like 100% a lawsuit, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's what's scary. It's like, people get these dogs because they want to look like they're a badass carrying these dogs around, and they don't really understand. Like, that situation with that guy, like, luckily the dogs just killed the owner. I mean, it's terrible that the son even had to watch that, because the whole entire thing was just completely avoidable. But just to think that there could have just been like a mom there with their 3-year-old pushing the kid on the swing, and that kid could have, it's just like, this just doesn't even need to be a problem. It needs to be more regulated. And I don't know how you can do it, because they're like all dogs can bite, right? Chihuahuas can bite. This is the big argument that they like to have, that Chihuahuas bite more than pit bulls do. But Chihuahuas don't kill people.
An adult human could manage a Chihuahua. Most adult humans can't handle one of these extra large dogs, let alone 3 of them at the same time.
And the thing is that I understand that there's lots of people that have, like, one of my best friends has 2 German Shepherds, which are dogs that that bite. They're known to bite, and Rottweilers and everything. She's she's like a dog mom. They're her children. They're great and this and that. But then when they get into the wrong hands and they're not trained properly, or they're just whatever it is that caused these dogs to snap, it's the same with the little kid the other day, like 5 years old. The dogs were older than the kids, so the dogs have been there since that kid got brought into the house for 5 whole years. Not a problem. Never. They said anyway, never, not a problem. Never bought. No aggression. All of a sudden,
it doesn't matter. It's an animal. Like,
so
what are you talking about?
But it's just, it happens all the time. Like, what's the solution? I don't know. Just keep protecting it and saying like nothing to see here. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, I don't think we're ever going to be in a place really where these types of animals get banned from being able to be owned. But I think maybe there needs to be a rule that, you know, 1 adult per aggressive animal, because an adult certainly can barely handle 1 of them, let alone 3 of them at the same time. And it's ridiculous that the dogs had to get tasered to get them off of the person, and that other people risk their lives and risk getting injured to help this person.
Not even tasered. They were getting beaten with shovels and shit. Which, you know, I actually commend the people that tried to intervene, because I wouldn't have. Honestly,
I
like,
have. I'd be too scared.
Because that thing gets loose and then all of a sudden, like, it's attacking you. No thanks. That shit scares me. No thanks.
This episode is brought to you by Nicole and Jemmy's Anatomy book.
Guys, if you need a last minute gift for somebody, my book is just a great little gift. It's not that expensive, and it is a conversation starter that people could put on their coffee table. It just looks like a cute little book that's pink, and then you open it up and completely horrified by some of the images in there, but it's a great conversation starter, and you could get it on Amazon and get it delivered by Christmas.
Yeah, so you could either grab one now to give it as the perfect gift, or you could get a little post-Christmas treat and enter for the chance to win 1 of 3 signed copies of the book. So all you have to do to enter is go over to Apple, Spotify, leave a review. If you watch on YouTube, you could subscribe. Take a screenshot of your review or your subscription and email it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com, and that will be your official entry into the contest. And we will be picking the winners this Friday.
Yeah, can't wait. Okay, true crime.
All right, the story with 1 gajillion layers, Luigi Mangione. We have a lot of updates, and there are just, I feel like, new stories coming out every single day related to this case.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, like, how this case has taken such turns. We've just talked about it last week, right? So it's only been 1 week.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since he committed the crime.
Yeah, and 1 week since he's been found. He was found last Monday, right?
Yeah, he was found last Monday when we were like in the middle of writing about it. I don't understand how people are journalists, because we're in the middle of writing this, and every 5 minutes there's a new update, and I'm like, I have to change what I just wrote. It's very stressful to be like trying to keep the most up to date. As of this episode, they're already working on a documentary about him, which I think is so outrageous. And then there's, you know, a lot of confusion about his charges right now. So right now, officials don't believe that he will be charged with the death penalty because they don't think he's eligible for a federal crime. And in New York, they don't have the death penalty. They haven't had it for about the last 2 decades. So he's been charged with second-degree murder, which I feel like most of us are used to knowing as murdering somebody but not planning it out. And as we know in this case, it seemed to be very strategic and planned out. Well, in New York City, under New York law, they only consider first-degree murders as a charge that applies to only a couple crimes, which includes the victim being a judge, a police officer, or a first responder. So I think that's interesting that New York law differs so much from what we're used to.
It is interesting, because do you think that that's possible? Maybe that's why he decided to do it there, just because if he did get caught, he would... I mean, second-degree murder, is there a chance of him going to prison for life, or like there's a high chance that he's not going to get in that kind of trouble for this?
Well, I think he could potentially have life. I don't want to speak to whether or not he would be eligible for parole or not, because I just don't know the answer to it. But I do think it was strategic because, you know, New York State does not have the death penalty. So, you know, that's not on the table. And then I think it is interesting because I didn't know until this case that they had different definitions of first degree and second degree murder.
Yeah, I don't know, but there so many crazy things are happening. So let's start talking about the semi copycat that already happened this week.
Yeah, so this woman in Florida was on the phone with her insurance company. They denied her claim, and at the end of the recorded phone call, you could hear her say, "Delay, deny, depose, you people are next." So obviously she got arrested pretty quickly after saying that.
Is she like a fucking moron? Really, like, you are a fucking moron.
Listen, even if you agree with everything he did and everything, you have to understand that saying something like that on a recorded phone call with somebody in the same industry is going to get you in trouble. How could you seriously think that was going to slip under the radar with how high profile this is?
This lady is 42 years old, so she's around my age, and she has 3 kids, and apparently she's a nuclear med tech at a hospital or a medical center or something. So she's got a good job. Like, she's a fucking idiot. Seriously, like, what did she say?
Yeah, in her defense, she was saying, like, she was defending her actions, saying she only said those things because they were hot in the news right now. But then she went on to say that the healthcare companies, quote, deserve karma and they're, quote, evil. So I'm like, you're saying you're not a threat. You're saying you only use the words because they were fresh in your mind. But then you're wrapping right around and saying that they are bad and evil and they deserve it. So what are you doing?
What does she think is going to happen? She's a terrible mother, actually, because, like, listen, everybody in the world's got opinions, right? Keep your fucking mouth shut, because you're not changing anything or doing anything. And now you could potentially go to jail. You're definitely going to lose your job. You could go to jail and, like, not be with your kids over what? Like, because you had to say this out loud? Like, it did nothing. You're a fucking idiot.
So she was charged with threats to conduct a mass shooting or act of terrorism. I don't know if that's considered a federal charge, which
That's a heavy charge.
Think about if she gets a worse sentence than Luigi does, because her crime may qualify as a federal crime, where murder does not qualify as a federal crime unless you're hiring a hitman to cross state lines. So think about the potential of her getting a worse sentence than the guy that actually committed the crime, just because you said something in the heat of the moment.
Even if she gets off of this completely somehow, which I don't know, because I feel like they're going to make an example of her so people stop doing dumb shit like this. Like, even if she's just a regular person, right? So she is not seemingly like, you know, a multi-millionaire like the Luigi guy is. She's just a person that works at a hospital and doesn't seem to have like millions of dollars sitting in a bank account. So she's just ruining the quality of life for her children. That's all that she did right now. She's not some kind of hero. She's nothing. She just ruined the quality of life for her children. She'll probably, I would like to say that she's never going to be able to work in healthcare again because of this, which means that her associate's and bachelor's degree that she has in nuclear medicine was a waste of time, because she can't even do that as a job anymore. And for what? Like, the legal fees that she's going to have, even though there are GoFundMes to get money for her legal fees, it's just like, I don't know who would donate money to that, because she's a stupid person. Why would you give a stupid person money?
We'll get more on that later, but I think we can all agree that, you know, we've had, you know, a really frustrating phone call with some type of customer service, and we've all said things in the heat of the moment. One time I was on the phone with my cable provider when I was living with my roommate a couple years ago. The person was being extremely unhelpful. It was something the company did that caused my internet to not work. And then I thought I hung up and I was like, that person's a fucking asshole. And then they called me back and said, I heard you.
Well, you know what? That company is, I know exactly what you're talking about, that they like have the ability to completely enrage you. But you're right. There's lots of different, like, I see what the other side saying, well, like, you not having the internet is not the same as like you not being able to get medicine that you need or health insurance
for
that
sure.
you need. Like, and trust me, like, prior to this happening, they probably got similar threats like this all the time. But because that dude shot and killed that dude, now it's like real. It's real, and it happened, and now it could happen again. And like, the worst part is that how he's being held such a hero is only going to further fuel people like this lady to feel emboldened and like empowered to say something like this, because and like that's not helping. That's not going to help anything. It's just going to make people feel like they could go around killing people all the time for things. It's just like not the way to go about things.
I think regardless about how you feel about the situation overall, I think you need to realistically expect that if you threaten somebody, you're going to get in trouble for it. It's just as simple as that.
Regardless of
the situation's not so black and white, you know? I mean, there's a whole group of people that could argue, fuck those people. What she said, I agree with. She did the right thing. There's a whole other group of people that's like, she's a monster. Why would you say something like that? How are you so insensitive? Regardless of where you stand on either side, you just have to understand the consequence when you threaten another person. And that's just the basics of it. So let's also talk about this backpack company. So the founder of the backpack company, Peak Design, is also facing a lot of criticism because he tipped off the police line that Luigi was wearing one of their bags.
So this is interesting because this has happened in lots of crimes, you know, that they could track. Remember when we were covering that case, the boy in the box?
Yeah.
So, and I don't know the exact details off of the top of my head, but there in Philadelphia years ago, was it like 50 years ago? It was a long time ago. They found this random dead child inside of a box. And with that box, they were able to determine that it was a box from a bassinet or something that was purchased at like JCPenney's, and they were able to track the serial number and see what store it was bought at and stuff. Like this is just like old school police work kind of thing, to be able to say, oh, that guy, didn't they do it with the Koberger one too? Like they found what knife it was and where it was sold and everything just based upon the sheath that they found. They do, and that's how they try to find people who did crimes or connect them to it.
I think, you know, a big concern that people have with this case is that their backpacks have serial numbers in them and they have privacy concerns with their purchases. I saw other people pointing out that they're worried if they had bought a backpack from this company and then they sold it on a secondhand website or to a friend or something, what if that person commits a crime? Are they going to be liable for the crime because the serial number matches them? But to your point, this is old school police work. It's kind of similar to how they ID cars that are found or used in crimes. It's the same thing. They're just doing basic tracking techniques.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not killing people, like listen, anything that you buy, if you murder something and it's involved in the murder, then they're going to try to track it. I don't see why anybody really has a problem with that. Like, what's the privacy concern?
So
he fucking killed somebody. Like, we could sit here and talk about the reasons or whatever, but like, it's against the law in the United States to murder a person. So he needs to go to trial and get investigated like every other fucking person does or should. And then it could be determined, like, listen, he might go to court and then the jury might say not guilty and he could be free, and we need to respect that. But until then, he broke a law and we need to like investigate that law. You can't be threatening people that they're a snitch. Like, he killed somebody. This just like blows my fucking mind, honestly.
All right, so I want to talk about this like really similar thing that happened in Philly. So during the riots a couple of years ago, you know, people were flipping police cars over and setting them on fire, and then photographers were at the scene taking pictures of all of it. And in this one particular photo, the police were trying to figure out who set this cop car on fire. It's a crime to do something like that. So this person...
No, they deserved it.
Like, well, that's what people think. But anyway, in the pictures, most of the people are wearing masks or their faces are covered. So they were having a really hard time identifying the people that were setting the cop cars on fire. This was what was really interesting to me. In one of the pictures, there was a female wearing a very specific T-shirt. And they were able to, I guess, Google reverse search the image. You know what I'm trying to say? They were able to figure out where the shirt came from. And it was this very unique shirt from Etsy. So then they went to the Etsy shop and they went through all the orders and they figured out who found it through Etsy.
That's what they should do. That's what cops do.
And that person got arrested.
Okay, so then they got arrested, and then that's what should happen, and then the jury could decide if they should be in trouble or not, because that's how it works in this country.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's like, if you're if you're committing a crime, it's not that hard in 2024 to find people, right? Like even if I see a t-shirt I like on TV, I'll take a picture of my TV, go to Google and reverse image search it, and I will find it. So, of course, when you're wearing a really specific t-shirt, not just like a black long sleeve shirt or a black t-shirt, somebody's going to probably be able to find it really easy.
This guy, and this is what's really sad, because I feel it's the same exact thing with, you could talk about two different companies right now. You could talk about McDonald's and now this backpack company. This guy is like a backpack company, and it's not like a huge corporation like Jansport or something. It's like the guy's just trying to make a living. He has nothing to do with like anything. And he gets pulled into it because a murderer is wearing his product. And now, not only, like, he said when he called to report it that was his company, he said that they already had multiple tips that backpack was from that company.
And if they were onto it, if he called or not, he was going to get a court order to give over his customer records.
So he's screwed either way, just because the guy. Now, like, what is, if the cops come to him and say, we need the records from this particular model of backpack, he can't say no legally, or he'll go to jail for withholding evidence. So if he gives it, then he's a snitch. Like, people just don't even think of the positions people are in. It's the same shit with the McDonald's. Like, what the fuck does McDonald's have to do with this guy who killed someone and happened to be sitting there at that moment in time eating a hash brown? Like, people are leaving negative reviews on that particular location of the McDonald's. That's an individually owned franchise that you're fucking somebody's business up because of that. It has nothing to do with this guy.
I think we could,
It's just like, people are fucking idiots sometimes, I swear.
Even take yourself out of this situation and how you feel either way. Just think about anything that happens in life anymore. People are just so easy to make a TikTok, leave a review, or anything. I think people are just like unwell anymore because if the slightest thing happens that you do not like, people are the first to jump on TikTok and make a video talking shit about it.
The craziest thing to me is that there's always, like, throughout history and stuff, you always could think about people from any side, and whatever you think about, there's always like certain things that most people could agree with. And shit got so fucking weird in the past couple of years. Like, I used to think that if you said to somebody, what do you think about grown-ups having sex with children? That every single person in the country would be like, fuck them. Like, those people are disgusting human beings. And now there's people that, like, they want to talk about it and they don't necessarily disagree with it. Like, then you think, okay, maybe we could all agree that murder's bad, right? We all could say, like, you shouldn't be able to go up to somebody in the middle of New York City and shoot them in the head because you disagree with what they're doing. And now it's like, you can. Like, how could we ever, like, unite as people if we can't agree on, like, these basic human things?
But then people will come back at you and say, what's the difference if that guy got murdered because he killed many more people with his horrible policies?
Yeah, and so did Dr. Fauci, and I could go on the list of thousands. I could name 50 people off the top of my head right now that, like, how about people that do brownouts on fire companies and people that are short-staffed in police departments and blah, blah, blah. There's always somebody, like, I bring this example up of, like, some of my old bosses at the hospital that would just, like, cut corners all the time and cut staff and overwork the staff that was there, and people's cancer wouldn't get diagnosed correctly, or this, that, or the other, which ultimately would lead to them dying. Like, you could just, you could talk about it, so many people, right?
All right, well, let's move on. Speaking of Etsy, they removed Luigi merch because people were making ornaments, t-shirts, and everything. God. And there was a GoFundMe that started, but GoFundMe took it down. But there is another active fundraising website which has raised over $130,000.
It's so funny how you could see all of these kids, and it's a lot of it is, like, young people that are just can't think for themselves, and they just jump on the latest trend. you can really write a list of all of the different things that have happened over the couple years and been like, this is the trending thing. So now it's like the trending thing for all these people to be doing these posts saying they were with Luigi between that time period for an alibi. Have you seen those?
No.
There's like all these people will post a picture of them like under a Christmas tree with him cropped into it. And they'll say, I was with Luigi on December 4th between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. or something like that, like saying that they are his alibi. But there's like lots of people posting it, just like randos. But they're all young people. It's a trend.
Whatever. All
It's
right.
like, let me be cool with my friends. Yeah, just get on to
I'm
the next story.
exhausted by this topic, so I just want to move on.
Okay.
All right. Influencer Hannah Hyatt is being investigated by police after posting a video where her son appeared to be flinching and afraid of her and her husband.
So I found the video and like half of it is blurred out. She apparently took it down. So do you have any insight on this? Because it looked like the kid was sitting in a shopping cart and the dad was like going to put a box in the cart and the kid like jumped back. And all of these people are saying that he was flinching, like he was scared he was going to get hit or something.
How could you possibly tell that from a video? I'm not even defending her. Listen, I have a serious problem with people using their children heavily on social media. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not defending her. But like, how can you seriously tell something like that from a video to the point where Child Protective Services is involved?
Well, I think Child Protective Services have to be involved if people call them. If they can't ignore the calls. So right there, that doesn't mean anything. And like I said, the whole, like literally half the video was blurred out, so I couldn't see the kid's face. But I saw what it looked like. The guy was like holding a box in the freezer section and like going to like put it into the cart, and maybe the kid flinched because they thought that the box was coming too close to their face or something. Like, I don't really know because I couldn't 100% make it out, but I do think that it's almost fucked up to start a viral claim that a kid looks like they're getting child abused when what if that's like genuinely didn't happen and now you're publicly accusing a father of beating their child. And even if it's proven that that doesn't happen, like those accusations never really go away. Like that's always going to be like permanently tattooed on this guy.
I think the bigger conversation we need to have is, you know, I don't see a problem with people posting photos and everything of their kids or little funny moments here or there. But when your primary content involves your child, I don't understand how you're being a present mother. And we should just stop it.
And you could argue that they're setting themselves up. You're putting yourself out there for that. There were other videos too. I guess there was another video where she was like, how many dirty diapers can you find around the house? And there was like 17 diapers or something in this video all around the house, like wrapped up in this corner, and like that's, you know, that's people will say, oh, they're living in unsanitary conditions and stuff like that. But like,
when you put your life out there,
it probably isn't even real. That's the thing. Like people make videos and it's like the kids will tell me about these videos all the time. And I'm like, that didn't even happen. They completely set that up. Like this Mr. Beast guy has like a whole staff behind these cameras. Like a lot of it is just like set up shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. So I'm not defending her either. I think that she's just another person that's like a nurse or something that's doing this with the kids. And you're just like, why? Like, now, like, if you're under investigation for child abuse, I'm not sure that you could be a nurse and work in a hospital. I don't know, you know, like, just fucking stupid. But listen, like, there's a real case that happened. This Ruby Frank lady, remember
we've
her?
covered it a bunch on here.
So this has happened where there was a mom influencer on YouTube that had millions of followers who was actually abusing her children to the point where, like, she was tying them up and not feeding them, and the kid escaped the house and had raw marks on around their hands and legs where they were like had rope tied around them too tight, which is a chronic wound. It's not something that just happened from a one-time thing. And she got charged with what? Aggravated child abuse, and like she's in prison right now, right?
I don't know the status of where she is right now. I think that so many people are using their children in their social media that they're literally making laws about the children getting paid from being in the videos, which is so ridiculous to think that so many kids are on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and everything, that they are now getting a cut of money that their parents are making off of using them. Which
Well,
they should.
They
They
should.
should. I'm just saying the amount of children being used in that way is ridiculous.
It's just similar to, we watch like Disney Channel shows with kids and they're kid actors, right? It's literally the same thing. Like when you have, and we know this because we have a social media channel that we don't even post anywhere nearly as much as some of these people do. It's a job. And to think every single time we do a post, we would have to go to our kids and be like, hey, you need to come here and work because we need to make this video. It's a job for them and they should get paid and have some kind of protections. You could say that they are living the money because usually a parent will buy a better house or a better car or whatever. But like ultimately the parents can blow through all the money and the child will have nothing and they're completely exploited by the time they're an adult. So they should have some kind of rights as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about Ellen Greenberg. We talked about her on the show in August. We talked about her quite a lot in the Gross Room. She is the teacher that was found dead back in 2011. It was initially ruled a homicide, then switched to a suicide, but her family is working to get the manner of death switched back to homicide or undetermined. And now her fiance at the time of her death is speaking out for the first time since.
So obviously with this case, it's just a big. We did a high profile death dissection on this 2 years ago now, and we really broke it down. It's 2 parts, and it just really goes through the autopsy report and breaks down every single thing that was seen. And you can listen to one side of the story and say it was definitely suicide, or one side of the story and say it was definitely homicide. Whatever it ends up being, if they do ever reopen the case and look into it more, the boyfriend at the time or the fiance at the time had a lot of suspicious behavior around her death, and that's why he's always had the spotlight on him. And in addition to that, he had some people in his family that, like, what did they work for the DA's office or something? There was something with one of the uncles or something that he called right away after it happened, and he was a higher up person in Philadelphia government as far as that's concerned. So, and just the whole entire way that the death went down. So let's say suicide, right? There's definitely things that we could say were suicide. She didn't have any history of suicidal ideations, but she was very anxious because she was getting married, and so much so she couldn't sleep or anything. And she was having doctor's appointments with a psychiatrist that she only saw 2 or 3 times over the course of 2 weeks. And during that time, she was given multiple psychiatric drugs, including Zoloft. So this just happened within a 2-week period. She was given Zoloft, and then she said it wasn't working, which I was under the assumption that an SSRI takes at least 2 weeks to give the full effects. Then they switched her to Xanax. Then they prescribed her Ambien and Klonopin to sleep. All of those drugs they can have a history of causing people to have psychotic episodes. So that alone could have caused her to be suicidal at the time, and psychosis, like doing something like stabbing yourself multiple times. Also, the forensic evidence showed that there was no DNA on the weapon or her clothes except hers. There was no other foreign DNA, which means nothing because a person can go around that by wearing gloves or something like that. Also, in the autopsy report, it did say that she had stabbed herself in the neck, but she had nicked the dura mater, which is the covering around the spinal cord, but did not sever it, which would have caused her to still be capable to use her arms to do additional stab wounds. But the biggest fight against this is that the autopsy report in itself and the person that performed the autopsy was just such a complete shit show that we don't know what happened. And that's why the report is so important.
Could you argue that if like the medical examiner, I know you're not supposed to do this, I'm just saying, could you argue that if the medical examiner goes into a case thinking it's a certain way, that they're only looking for signs of that? So that when when you want to change it and go back and evaluate it, they might not have other information that could be helpful in changing the cause of death.
Yeah, and I 100% think that's a possibility in this case, just because he did initially rule it a homicide. So he gets the body, he gets the whole investigative report too before the body. But when he's at the medical examiner's office, opens the body bag and has this body, and all he reads is she was stabbed 20 times, found in her apartment by her boyfriend, like all these specific facts, because they didn't have all of the evidence of the case yet. Obviously, they didn't know about the DNA yet and all of this stuff. And that's, I think that any person in the world would be like, okay, you got stabbed 20 times or whatever, like clearly somebody did this. But like when you're a medical examiner, you just need to keep your mind open that this could be anything. But he initially ruled it a homicide, which makes me think, yes, that he did go into the autopsy thinking it was a homicide and just was documenting these stab wounds. But this medical examiner, particular in Philadelphia, had multiple reprimanded letters for being sloppy with his autopsy reports. And like the bottom line is that her autopsy's done and her body's gone, and there's no one to go back and look at what was there except the documentation that he provided and what they could look at with whatever sections they took under the microscope. And one of the biggest things that they say in this case is that the injury to her spinal cord. So if it was like, okay, they only like the knife tip but pushed the spinal cord but didn't do anything, then yes, she could have used her arms. But if it cut it even a little bit, then she wouldn't have been able to. There's things like that, like how could she have done that? And she would have already been dead, or she would have been paralyzed or whatever. But like, now there's no going back, kind of. So now you just have to look at what evidence is available. She had multiple searches on her computer during the time of taking all those weird drugs that were referencing suicide, perhaps. There was she was looking up suffocation, suicide methods, sex fantasy death, electrocuted by death in a bathtub, just weird things like that make you think like, yeah, it's possible, even though she wasn't talking about suicide, that she could have because of these drugs. And that maybe that psychiatrist that prescribed her that concoction should be looked into as well. But then the fiance was acting weird as hell afterwards too, and has been silent until now. How long ago did this happen? It was
in 2011. So
yeah,
13 years ago.
13 years ago. So that makes you think like, well, what's going on here? And
that doesn't make him guilty though.
It doesn't make him guilty. I just think that when you and listen, like this is one thing that we learned, like everybody acts different when someone dies, like even in your family or whatever. It's just like everyone handles death differently. It just was like the whole and I don't know all of the details about how he acted. I just remember when I wrote it up, I was just kind of like, this is a little weird how it's all handled. I feel like he like call his uncle before he called 911 or something weird. It just was like stuff that you just normally wouldn't do.
You just can't say that because you've never been in a position like that. So you just can't say that.
Like, I can say it. I just said it.
Obviously, the right thing to do is to call the police first, but some people are in serious state of shock that they don't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, and like the 911 call sounds, have you ever listened to it? It sounds a little staged. I don't know. Just the whole thing is just weird. But the bottom line is that the biggest thing to learn from this case is that the autopsy report, if it was done by like a legit person, this wouldn't even have been a question. And now, you know what I mean? So it's really important to make sure that your report is like as accurate as can be, because in this case, it's, you know what I mean? It's so important.
Let's get to the actual story, which is what he said, speaking out, because we've already explained this case a bunch of times. The fiance is saying, I hope and pray that you never lose someone you love like I did to a terrible disease, meaning mental health, and then be accused by ignorant and misinformed people of causing her death. If you're really writing a truthful story, dig deeper and please do some good by raising awareness for mental health. So I think, it's been all these years and he's probably just, it's a traumatic thing to go through, whether he did it questionably or not. I mean, right now he didn't because he's not been convicted of it, but the case has been coming up a lot recently. they're re-looking at the case and trying to change the manner of death. And now I think Nancy's writing an entire book about it. So it's pretty hot in the culture right now.
Didn't they just say a couple weeks ago that they're not opening it again or something?
I don't exactly know.
I think we talked about that on here actually.
Well, we talked about back in August that they were going to look at it and see if it was eligible to be changed.
Maybe we didn't talk about it when it happened, but I think they said at this time they're not looking into it anymore. So they'll obviously the parents are still going to try to keep appealing it, but look at this from the parents' perspective. It's like you get a call that your daughter's dead, which is just tragic, and then you find out that the preliminary autopsy report said homicide. So now in your mind, your child was murdered by somebody, and who you're going to think it was her fiance, right? Like.
I don't blame the parents at all for fighting this.
And then like a couple days later or whatever, they're like, oh, never mind, it was suicide. You would be like, what? She wasn't even suicidal. But, people are suicidal all the time and their parents don't know it. So that's one thing. But from her parents' perspective, I would be every single person would be the same way. Like, how the hell do you say this was a homicide and then change it to suicide? Like,
I don't blame the parents for fighting it at all, because the report was sloppy, and that's like the central point of this at the end of the day. And then I think a lot of people just have a really hard time accepting if what really happened was that she died by suicide. I think some people have a really hard time just accepting that as the true answer.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
When you have the most sloppy autopsy report of all time.
Yeah.
So.
And listen, like, even if this is my opinion, and this could be whatever, but even if they reopen the case and go through everything, I don't know that they're really ever going to get the answer they want, because there's just, unless the only saving thing, which I never really got to the bottom of this, is if they took, like, if he was talking about that spinal cord injury and he took very good photographs of it, that's the only way that they're going to be able to go through this again and say that injury, if she had that injury, there's no way she could have done anything else with her arms at that point. But if they don't have a photograph and all they have is in writing what he saw, then it's nothing can really change. It's just somebody analyzing the data that's already there differently. Yeah. Okay. Medical news. We only have one story this week, but it's a good one.
Which is unusual, but this guy went on TikTok to warn others that while he was at the gym, he put a towel down on a piece of equipment, then picked it up to rub his face. After that, he thought he had contracted pink eye, but it actually turned out to be chlamydia.
Yeah, so I guess the video is showing this other doctor doing a video online saying that you could only contract chlamydia because of, the bacteria can't really survive outside of the body, and basically saying that claim wasn't true. But I found a journal from 1995 from Cornea Journal that said that they concluded that non-porous plastic surfaces can serve as a potential vector for the transmission of chlamydia infection to the eye, especially under humid conditions. So they did a bunch of studies with the bacteria, and they saw that, like, in normal conditions, it cannot survive off of the human body for long, but that's because the human body is a certain temperature and keeps it, you know what I mean? That's what helps nourish it and keep it alive. So if it's in a humid condition, like, let's say sweat from a gym, hot, you know what I mean? Like, it, in theory, it could. It's not like, okay, everybody needs to just, like, be careful of this, but, like, in theory, according to this paper, it could happen.
Well, I also saw later in the article, it said that you could possibly contract it by sharing sex toys. And what's different between a bench at the gym and a sex toy? Because they're both objects, technically.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true that you can. It's, I guess, with a sex toy, like, it wouldn't be like, okay, you use the sex toy and then leave it out for 10 days and then a person uses it and gets it. It would have to be like at the same time situation. So it's the same thing, like, but listen, you've been to the gym, right? Like, sometimes you'll go and see women, men, whatever, but women especially, because your fluids are just, like, right there out in the open, right? It's like you're wearing a a pair of leggings and you're not wearing underwear underneath, it's only just like a thin layer of fabric between you and the bench that you're sitting on. How many times have you seen like full on ass and labia prints on like the chairs at the gym and stuff? It's if you went from like wet to wet, it in theory it could potentially happen.
Is it common to not wear underwear at the gym? Because I don't think I really knew this, but I'm not a gym person. I mean, you could just tell by looking at me that I'm not a gym person, but I don't know. I've never not worn underwear to work out. I guess it's just a common thing people do.
But like if you want your ass to look good in your leggings, then you wouldn't want to have like panty lines.
I just feel like you wouldn't. You're
just not that girl, but there's plenty of those people there. But it's just like in theory it could happen. They have those wipes there that are disinfected wipes, and you really should just wipe it down because you can get like MRSA infections and stuff like from people in situations like that. So it's always good to just wipe stuff down before you touch it anyway.
Yeah, like I think the general rule is you're supposed to wipe the machine down after you use it and sweat all over it, but so many people are not doing that. So maybe everybody just needs to get into the mindset of before I sit down on it, I'm going to wipe it down first and then go from there.
Yeah, if this guy who made the TikTok wasn't lying and he didn't have any sexual contact with someone, then it's completely possible. And that's why that doctor probably literally referenced this paper that said that you can get eye chlamydia from a non-porous surface. That's where he got that information. If the guy, because I actually know somebody that happened to, by the way. It was a friend of mine got it in her eye actually from semen, but like, if this guy that was
she was in the act?
She was in the act. Like, but this TikTok dude, like if he didn't have sex like that and he's being honest, then like, yeah, that's how he got it.
Disgusting.
Okay, other death news.
All right, we had lots of TikTok stories today. So this chick went on TikTok and was explaining how her twin sister died 5 years ago from viral meningitis. When it came time to let their family know, the father thought that her 90-year-old grandparents and some distant relatives just could not handle the information. So he had her pretend to be the dead twin for the last 5 years.
Shit is so outrageous.
It's outrageous, and what's even worse is that recently the grandma was on the deathbed, and then she finally told her. And I'm like, why would you burden her with the information right before she dies?
Well, because she didn't want to be burdened with the lie anymore. So, like, that's a typical millennial thing to do is just,
but they're
like,
still
get your feelings out.
Okay, boomer. So they're still lying to the grandpop, though, but they have told other distant relatives at this point, and they're pissed.
Yeah, what was she doing? Some all these shows that they have, like the Parent Trap and the Liv and Maddie show, where it's like one actress playing a twin. You could see how they do that on a split screen. Like, how are you doing that in real life? Was she bringing two outfits and going in the bathroom and like changing, and they just were never seen together?
I don't think they lived near this family at all, so I don't think they were like seeing each other. They were just talking over like FaceTime or the phone.
Yeah, well,
so it's obviously easier when you're doing that.
But the lady was in her 90s or something. She was like, I understand from the son's perspective that he doesn't want to upset his mom because she's so fragile and old. But like, I think it's crazier that the sister lost her sister, which is terribly upsetting, and then had to play along with this for her dad.
The whole thing is weird.
How do you just like act normal and pretend to be a person that died without getting upset? You know what I mean? Like it's just very unusual situation.
I don't know. And like some people in the comments were sympathetic to it and said they understood and they would do the same thing to, not upset other people. And then a lot of people were like, what is wrong with you? That's weird. And it is weird.
Well, it's weird too, because if you think about it, because I always talk about how just the younger you people get, the softer and you can't handle anything, right? But like this lady's 90 some years old, right? She's lived through like some shit. She's probably mad because she's just like, you honestly think I couldn't handle that? Like think about what a person that's in their 90s has dealt with in their life. You know what I mean? Like, Don't try to tiptoe around my feelings. I could handle anything. Plus, when you're in your 90s, like every single person that you know has died. Your parents, your siblings, your friends. Like the older you get, the more death you see that you can handle. Like it's kind of insulting to the mom to think that she wouldn't have been able to handle it at her age, you know?
It's insulting, and now she's going to die knowing that A, the granddaughter died, and B, her loved ones are hiding this information from her, which is kind of unsettling.
Yeah, it's just like telling your husband, oh, I know we've been married for 50 years, but one of your kids isn't yours or something. Like, you don't tell somebody some fucked up It's to get it off your chest. It's not for them, you know?
Well, I don't know. I just can't agree with it.
No, me neither.
All right, let's move on to questions of the day. Every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, you guys could head over to our story and ask whatever questions you want. First, with what you see in your career, has it made you more worrisome as a mother?
Yes.
What
examples? I have too many examples. I'm just worried all the time. Anytime.
I mean, I'm sure you heard every rant on today's episode. Vicious dogs, marijuana, drinking, all things listed, social media, erratic behavior.
Yes.
This episode, I feel like, really surmises all of those stressors.
There's plenty more, trust me. Lots of medical stuff too. You know, it's just like, well, Lillian said to me this morning, she's like, I have a pain in my head right here. And I'm just like, oh my God. You know, like I go through like, what could that be? Because she's complained about it for the past 2 days.
Yeah, but you also are so reactive when they tell you something's wrong with them that I feel like they just do it for anything. Like, she's always like, my fingertip hurts. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but I don't get nervous about that. I get nervous about like anything in the head and body situation. But yeah, like it's typical and normal for me to just be like, where is that anatomically located? Let me go through the differential diagnosis of a child and her age. Like, what could that be? And like, obviously, you know, I go through that and then I'm just like, it's probably, she's stuffed up. It's probably her sinuses, whatever. Like, I do that stuff. But yeah, I mean, how could I not? Like, it's just, and I always go to the worst thing because that's just like, I always see the worst of the worst. So yeah.
That's why we call you Dr. Death in our family. All right, 2, will there be more external exam episodes?
Yeah, there will be. We're going to do those more on days that we're going to be off and stuff, just because we find that we've had so many news stories that we're cutting a lot of stories and we want to cover. I mean, honestly, we have enough to do an episode every day, which just isn't happening at this time. But, you know, we do want to do other external exam episodes too. So that will happen in the future, just whenever. It's not going to be like on a schedule.
All right, last, favorite holiday sweet and favorite holiday dish. Some of these questions that you guys submitted for the Christmas Q&A, I moved up that were because that's not going to come out till after Christmas. So I wanted to answer some of your Christmas-related questions. But this was submitted for our winter Q&A.
Sweets?
Your favorite holiday sweet and your favorite holiday dish.
Like Christmas cookies, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
The ricotta ones and pizzelles and stuff like that. A lot of them, I can't eat ones that other people make, so I have to make them myself with gluten-free. But they taste just as good gluten-free, I think. The ricotta cheese cookies, they're like one of my favorites. I'm gonna actually make them this weekend because I need to taste that flavor is very specific to Christmas time.
I'm making them this weekend too. I was gonna make you a box.
All right, well then just do that and then I won't do it. Save me some time. Yeah, so Christmas cookies for sure. And dish, I don't know. I don't really like, well, we just went to the party this weekend. Our cousin Jen made that really good thing. I don't even know what it is. She's gluten-free too though, so it makes it easier, but she makes it every year. And I'm going to talk and describe it to you and you're going to sound like it's so weird, but it's like this log of like wasabi that's covered in cream cheese or something.
Oh, that sounds good.
And then it's on a plate and then she like pours soy sauce on it and like the green onions. And then you eat it. You get like a rice cracker and like just dip into it and eat it. And it like, you know, it clears your sinuses out because you just have this like big whiff of wasabi. I don't know how she makes it. Like, if there's anything else mixed in it, that's just what I'm gathering it is, just based on looking at it. It sounds so weird at a Christmas party, right? But like, she only makes it at the Christmas party, and that's like one of my favorite things. I probably ate half of it at the party the other day. What else? What about you?
My favorite holiday sweet is definitely cookies. My two favorite Christmas cookies are just classic butter cookies with like sprinkles on them and chocolate peppermint. I make chocolate cookies with peppermint Hershey Kisses, and those are my absolute favorite Christmas cookie. My favorite holiday dish, I'm going to say, is Mom's Gwunkies. Stuffed cabbage with ground beef and rice and tomato, and it's delicious.
Yeah, those are good too. But she makes those at other times a year too. They don't really remind me of Christmas necessarily, but yeah, they're really good too. Yeah, I just can't think off the top because there's like lots of different things because of the whole gluten situation. Like Aunt Evelyn used to make this really good like pineapple stuffing thing with the ham is so good. And then but I can't have that. And I tried to make it gluten-free and it's okay, but it's not really the same. And like panettone bread, you know that I know
Ew,
you
that
don't
is disgusting.
No, it's so good. That's like one of my favorite flavors ever. And so they have a gluten-free one. I think that brand Char, you know, the one that makes I think they make it, but they never have it in stock at Wegmans, and I want to try it, but like their stuff is like I don't know how it's executed. You know what I mean? Like it might be really good.
You could probably get a really good one online because they hold up pretty well.
Yeah, I seen them online, but they're like $70.
Yeah, panettone is expensive to make. I mean, when you get them at the store, they're like mass manufactured. When you get really good homemade ones, they're expensive to make. Remember?
I don't mind spending $70 on a piece of bread. No, I do, but like that's a risk. If I know that it tastes delicious, then you know the best bread is worth all the money in the world. But like, I don't to take a risk. Like, what if it tastes like cardboard? I'd be like, oh, cool.
You know what other appetizer I like that you can really have all year, but I only try to have at Christmas because I would eat it all the time and it's like so high calorie, is when you get like a block of cream cheese with the red pepper jelly.
Oh yeah, you should get that on Christmas Eve.
I am gonna do it because it's
I
so
like
good.
that one too.
It is so delicious. I'm gonna try to make sourdough as well, but hopefully it won't be the epic failure that my Thanksgiving sourdough was. I tried to make one of those like turkey shaped ones and it just looked so bad. It was so ridiculous looking, but whatever. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the Christmas meals. I just like eating a lot of Christmas cookies, and I can't believe neither of us mentioned Christmas coffees. I think that those could be considered a holiday
Oh yeah,
sweet.
anything like if you just you could just use like eggnog in your coffee instead of creamer. It's so good.
That, and I had
Eggnog
a white.
is so like bad for you.
Oh, it's so horrible, but it's so delicious. I had a white peppermint mocha the other day too. That was truly heavenly.
Yeah, I've been trying to stay away from those Starbucks drinks because they're just like they're like so many calories. I just can't. I mean, once in a while, like when you go Christmas shopping and stuff, but I love them too. They have that. I did try that one that was like a matcha like cookie flavor or something. I don't know. It was really good.
That does sound good. All right, guys. Well, we will see you later in the week with our Christmas special. And don't forget to submit your review or a screenshot of your YouTube subscription to win a copy of Nicole and Jemmy's anatomy book.
See you on Thursday.
Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day, and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.